In a 4 or 5 hour session, I was able to accomplish 6 months of like SEO work. 99% of people are in this like level one bucket using ChatGPT, using Claude, maybe using Gemini. I actually used AI for it.
No way.
You put a smart marketer and give them the ability to build things, that's where that top 1% really comes from.
You and Greg Eisenberg spin up Boring Marketing, and you eventually help coin the term vibe marketing in a group chat. Can you explain what the top 1% of AI marketers get that maybe non-technical founders are completely missing?
I kind of describe this in terms of like a progression of levels in terms of your proficiency with AI in terms of a marketer or a non-technical founder, if you will. Pretty much 99% of people are in this like level one bucket that I talk about. And that's where people are just, using ChatGPT, using Claude, maybe using Gemini. But, the context and the chats and the projects are all somewhat disconnected. Maybe they're using some AI tools here and there as well. So they're not really piecing things together in systems. Ultimately, vibe marketing is about like leverage and efficiency. You get some of that from level one, but you unlock more when you start gaining the ability to like chain those things together in automated workflows. So level two is kind of moving from disconnected tools and systems into being able to bring those together to piece together like a workflow that can help you accomplish a task or a goal or something like that. That was sort of like a big unlock for me, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago when I started building workflows and sharing them on X and things like that.
Yeah.
I was sharing a few with Greg, and he was like, hey, you should write a tweet and call this vibe marketing. So that was kind of like a light bulb moment. And, it all kind of started there. And then, from automating workflows, then you naturally start to get into some of these like agentic coding tools and things of that nature. So I started playing with like Lovable and Replit and things like that. That
Yeah.
led me to Claude Code and Cursor and everything of that nature. And yeah, eventually you kind of start to blend with the engineering type stuff and see how all of it works. And, when you put a smart marketer and give them the ability to build things, I think that's where that top 1% really kind of comes from.
Cool. So let's maybe stick on like the level one and the level two, right? So this is like, I actually would think that the 99% might not even be using something like Claude. Like they might be using ChatGPT loosely and not really even in their work life from what I'm seeing. Like they aren't even using that correctly. So, what should people get started with if things like Cursor and MCPs are like way over their head? Like where can they go from, let's say they're at zero right now to at least improve their productivity?
Yeah. I like Claude in terms of LLMs the best. It's kind of my day-to-day workhorse. So, I mean, if you're using ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that, like, download Claude Desktop.
Yeah.
It's very similar to, any of these other interfaces. So there's nothing that, will surprise you. I just suggest giving Claude a try. The most basic way I think to get started in terms of improving productivity is starting to play with Claude projects. So ChatGPT has projects where you can kind of have this almost like environment where you can add different context and ChatGPT can kind of remember the goal that you're working toward. I like doing that in Claude. I can upload documents. I can have memory of sort of all the chats within this project that I have set up. And then I can ask Claude to memorize things and reuse them. That's called skills. So for instance, if you're someone non-technical or whatever, maybe you want to be able to write emails or social posts or something like that in your like authentic voice or close to it. So create your first skill maybe around like a voice, add some context and files to the project. And that was a big unlock for me is just working there within Claude and starting to use those features the right way.
Very cool. Okay. And do you, I think something where people might get confused in this space is like they hear these things like SEO 2.0 and all these different things and they don't know which ones they should be doing. Do you have a point of view of like what should someone who doesn't have product market fit versus someone who has product market fit do? Is that Is that like, does that vary quite a bit on the marketing side?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you don't have product market fit yet, you probably don't want to go and launch a comprehensive like SEO strategy and things like that. You're more focused on, kind of finding that use case that's going to stick and trying to nail retention and talk to customers and things of that nature. So in that kind of phase, I use AI mostly as like a research partner. I analyze the market. I try to identify who are the players in the space. What are they doing? How are they positioning themselves? What can I learn and what kind of gaps do I have that I can sort of attack or cover in the market based on what people are doing successfully? How can I make that my own and create like a unique angle in terms of, a marketing message or something like that? Once you kind of find your angle, then you still have to have a product that people like that, is going to deliver on that promise is the next piece. Some things I've unlocked working on my own like products lately
Yeah.
is just simply like recording customer interviews, in Google Meets and then uploading the transcripts into a Claude project. What are the patterns that these people are telling me? Like, what are we missing out on? Are they getting value? Like, what do they really want? Use it as a thought partner to kind of discover what those use cases might be and analyze those patterns within the calls.
And how often do you trust what Claude gives you versus your own judgment and taste?
Yeah, I mean, this is important. You can never like blindly trust everything AI tells you, like across the board. You know what I mean? In the marketing world, if you just use AI for all your blog posts or social posts and you
Yeah.
throw it out there, that's just considered like AI slop. Where you get out of the AI slop is where, you have that human in the loop that is an expert or they have knowledge or they can fact check or they can ensure that whatever's being produced is valuable. So, when you start to get into that sort of like level two space or whatever, where you're automating different tasks from AI or whatever, you still need to have humans in the loop to review and make sure those things are quality and factual and stuff like that. I'll use Claude and it'll think it's still 2024 like all the time. And I have to like constantly remind it, hey, it's November 20, recent information. So there's some hacks and some tips to kind of like work around that and make sure you're getting well researched and factual information. Like Perplexity is a great tool for that. It does a really good job with recent and relevant research. Claude has a research toggle that you can turn on, kind of like there
Yeah.
is in ChatGPT or Perplexity. It'll go deep and find recent information and everything. But it's definitely something to look out for.
So where does automation help the most and where does it hurt brand trust if you overdo it?
Yeah, I think that everyone's like, "What should I automate?" or whatever. That's a common question I get. Like, what workflow should I build?
Yeah.
I think if you just to kind of play the devil's advocate here, if you don't know what you should automate, then maybe there's not a good use case for you to automate something. You don't just want to build workflows for the sake of having like cool looking workflows.
Yeah, yeah.
If something's painful that you're doing manually every day and it's not blatantly obvious to you that, man, like I should find out a way to kind of automate this, then maybe you don't have a good use case. I mean, on the flip side, a lot of people don't know that certain things can be automated, I guess, is the other thing.
For sure.
So kind of like how I mentioned uploading like transcripts from customer interviews into AI, you can kind of do the same thing for like your SOPs if you're a business owner. Or if you have manual tasks that you're doing, record a Loom video of it and download the video and then like upload the video and have AI watch it and say, hey, are there smarter ways I could be thinking about approaching this set of tasks that's currently taking me 2 or 3 hours or whatever. So those are some recommendations that I typically make. Just trying to use AI to help you identify those opportunities too.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I know you have like a marketing community as well. Is there something that when people kind of join the community that they're surprised that marketers are automating or using AI for?
Yeah, I think it's kind of this sort of blend of like marketers starting to be able to build things, and that sort of runs across like workflows, but now so more kind of like coding tools, like in the past, like I've had agencies in the past and things like
Yeah.
that. We'd have to find specialists or freelancers to build a landing page, and it would take maybe a week or something like that, and there'd be a lot of back and forth. And now you can literally go build a landing page in 5 minutes. Like connect your email newsletter to it, start getting leads or opt-ins or something like that. And I think it's just like what people are surprised about is that marketers are becoming more and more technical in a sense now. And it's kind of a light bulb moment when they see that they can be builders too. I think that's one of the really cool things about AI.
Yeah, so you mentioned landing pages, and I know you've been doing like marketing agencies for like well over a decade now. Like, what are some areas that you feel you're doing like 10 or X faster than you were in like 2015?
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely the SEO stuff. Like I launched a boring like local blue collar business with a friend of mine here in Charlotte. It's actually like a roadside diesel mechanic service.
I saw that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and back in 2015, you'd have to find like a web design agency, an SEO agency, like hire all these like firms to go and help you achieve like local rankings quickly or relatively quickly. It'd probably take months, like going the traditional route and tens of thousands of dollars. But like in a 4 or 5 hour session, I was able to accomplish, I don't know, 6 months of like SEO work that an agency would have taken forever to accomplish with Claude Code, which is one of the AI coding models. So not only did I like build the website myself, I optimized it for certain search terms and keywords in the local market. I was able to build a bunch of like targeted landing pages on the site that people are going to every day. And now we have just like a nice little organic inbound system where the phone's ringing and we don't have to pay to get it to ring, and that's a big unlock for like a small local business. And in terms of the general like agency space and all that, I think that like AI fluency and familiarity for like these local businesses, there's such a massive gap there. Like we're in this bubble on X where, you know what I mean?
There's such a huge gap. Like I talk with business owners like locally. Like I talked to my barber the other day and I'm like explaining like, hey, you should have a voice agent here. Or like, how are you getting leads here for like wedding services? And it was just all over his head. And he's the business owner and he's a young guy. And yeah, it's just we live in this kind of X bubble where we think like
Absolutely.
all these like automations and everything is kind of
Yeah.
is standard, but it's
Right.
like it's not even close to being standard.
Right. Yeah. There, and that creates this kind of constant FOMO feeling that I'm missing out on something or a new tactic or tool, or everyone's doing this, I'm behind, or there's a new thing that I need to go and shift my focus to go and figure out and utilize. So there's a lot of just like shiny objects out there if you're in that bubble. So, going and talking to your barber or something like that is a great way to kind of escape the bubble and get like a reality check, which is, man, this is so early. Like 99% of like the local businesses out there don't have a clue what they're doing with AI. So if you're smart enough to go and like take advantage of that arbitrage, I think there's a lot of good businesses to be made there.
This might be a little bit of a challenging question, but what would you do if you were running an AI agency and you didn't have a following right now? Because I think a lot of people think that they need to be big on social media. And obviously, you have the advantage that you have a good audience. But what do you suggest for people who don't have the audience? Can they get started right away, or do they need to be compounding and building that audience in the background as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are great businesses built every day without an audience. I mean, like let's take the diesel mechanic service. Like we notice, my business partner noticed, hey, there's a lot of demand for this, and there's not enough decent mechanics in this area. And then we go on Google and we find that hey, there's a good amount of people actively searching for this service. We just have to be there. We just have to show up and have a nice value proposition associated with it. So like don't sleep on finding where the demand already is. Creating an audience kind of requires you to invest a lot of time to sort of nurture the relationship, build the trust, like introduce your offers and what you're doing and things like that. Whereas I think most businesses, if they go and do, some keyword research or something like that, or maybe you don't have a business idea, go and find where the demand's already at and just figure out how you can be like 1% better or 2% different or something along those lines. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to do that, I feel. And I don't know, like, I just like to think that the local sort of opportunities are all over the place. Like let's just say, like, if you're a homeowner, there are
Yeah.
probably 10 to 15 different things that you do throughout the year where you're potentially spending like thousands of dollars to do. Like landscaping projects, roofing, gutter cleaning, window installation, interior design. And if you're in a decent size, like city or metro or something like that, there's so much demand out there for those services. So you don't need an audience for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You don't need an audience, but the way to do it would be to try to help those businesses, is what you're saying. Like reach out to them directly and say, I know all of this. Give me a shot for either money, or if I save you money or bring in leads, like just figure it out so it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think so. Like, obviously there are ways to try to, tap into sort of those searches that are going on out in the market through, having like a good website and optimizing it with AI so that you're improving your visibility and things like that. If you're an agency and you're trying to serve those clients, I think that, this whole AI angle is pretty interesting. I think a lot of people's eyes will sort of like open up when you go and say, hey, I can help you save this amount of time or money with, these AI tools or something like that. If that's your offer, there's a lot of ways that you could scale up like personalized videos to get out into the market. Like everyone's sending basically the same sort of like cold emails still out there. Use like HeyGen or something to create like an AI avatar and personalize the messaging in each of those and create 100 videos and send those on LinkedIn and via email. And I bet you'll have a pretty decent response rate. So yeah, I think just kind of using some of those tools that not everyone's using can give you sort of that, I don't know, wedge to kind of get in there and have some conversations and stuff like that.
Have you used like tools like HeyGen for video ads at all?
I haven't really. I've tested them and just sort of like made videos and stuff like that. I see them all the time, like especially on YouTube. Like a lot of people using these kind of like they're like AI podcast formats or like AI
Yeah,
kind of
talking heads. Yeah, yeah.
and stuff like that. You can kind of tell that they're AI just like
Totally.
when you look close. But I think that that's just getting started. I mean, a year from now, we're not going to have a clue whether it's AI or not. And I think that's cool in one way and also very scary.
Yeah, I think there's recently like this Elon Musk video that like Bill Ackman thought was Elon Musk or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like smart people are getting fooled.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be fooled if I didn't look through the lens of like default assuming everything is AI first to
Yeah.
like totally
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah, for sure. But for like a brand and stuff, I think there is some level of risk in terms of losing like your authenticity or something like that. But at the same time, like I think that people are so conditioned to see AI content now, like when they're online and stuff like that, that I don't know if consumers really care that much.
Yeah, I think there's two differences, right? Like you could be a brand who's, let's say they're already doing video or they're already doing, I don't know, like carousels and doing stuff like that. And then you have to make the trade-off of should I use AI to scale it and do more of it?
Right.
That's very different than you're a business who's doing none of that because you don't have time, you don't have a studio, and now you're giving it a shot. I don't think it really hurts your brand that much to see if something converts.
Right. It's a great way to test concepts too. Like, hiring influencers and scaling that strategy up can be expensive. So, if you don't have data yet, it's a great way to see, hey, what type of message, what type of influencer, might drive a conversion for my product or for my service. And then, when you want to scale it up, then, hey, maybe you go out into the market and find, some people that you can work with, and you already have a nice plan, a nice brief, kind of the formula, if you will.
I'm going to put an image on the screen here. It's actually a quote you said on X,
Okay.
and would love to just get your first thought here. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep. So tell me how AEO or GEO differs from good SEO. an llm.txt file is not a valid answer. So, I mean, in my opinion, there are no really kind of differentiated strategies or whatever that makes attaining visibility in LLMs different from attaining visibility on, say, Google or traditional like search engine. There's really not. I mean, the GEO industry is obviously growing really fast. There's tools popping up that help you sort of measure if you're showing up when people sort of ask questions related to your brand or your products or services. If you really dig, and actually if you go through the comments of this tweet, I don't think there was one good answer in there for people that are really focused on LLM optimization that had a different approach or strategy. I think at the end of the day, you know, has become more sort of like cross-channel. It's not just about like your website, it's about your social presence and your brand and different trust signals and stuff. Backlinks still matter and make a lot of difference. You have expertise, authority, and trust, which is like a massive sort of like signal that Google takes into account. And I think that LLMs look at the same things. Like, so when you are trying to rank in ChatGPT, I mean, really it comes down to build a brand people can trust, create really good content, whatever that looks like. It could be articles or landing pages or blog posts, YouTube videos, social content supporting it. And it all comes down to like, hey, like, let's find a topic or a group of search terms or whatever, and let's try to understand how people are currently trying to answer those questions, and let's try to do it better. I mean, there's really no difference. And an LLM TXT file, it takes, 2 minutes to create, and it's just like kind of a little allow list of like, hey, let ChatGPT come to this site and understand what it's all about. So yeah, there's really no difference in my view. It's all about finding the demand and creating the supply, creating high quality supply.
So, do you think the reason there's so much hype and there's so many videos on it is because people like shiny objects and they want the quick win, and you're giving the boring marketing answer around building trust around multiple sources? So people are looking for that secret sauce.
Yeah, for sure. Like, are there some hacks out there that exist that could allow you to, pop up into ChatGPT or something like that quickly? I'm sure those exist. Are they long-term, like business building strategies that others can't replicate? Doubtful. I think that the way that you do that is through, building trust, building that expertise, et cetera, through multiple channels around a certain topic that's relevant to your business. And reality is like, 95% of searches are on search engines, not on LLMs also. So yes, it's like the shiny object where there's not actually near as much volume happening as there is on Google, but everyone's paying attention to it because it's like the new thing, And I think there's a lot of incentives for that as well, and to kind of talk it up like it's the new channel that everyone needs to focus on. There's a lot of SaaS products out there. There's a lot of VCs funding companies that are in this space. And I think that over the last couple of years, people have also kind of had this, sort of like got tired of like SEO type stuff as well, partially because a lot of AI tools popped up there and you've got all these AI blog posts and stuff that don't feel valuable. So I think people are just kind of trying to attach to the next thing in a sense.
Sure. And I think if you're ever looking just for like, what's the alpha over the next 2 weeks, then you're always going to be looking for that and you're never going to play the long game. Like if you want to find tactics and stuff, that's cool, but you have to play the long game or you're always going to be like, okay, that worked for 3 weeks. Now it doesn't work anymore. What's the next thing? And it's just not a great way to run a business. And if you're selling that, then you are also looking for the next new thing to sell people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the boring, compounding, sustainable strategies is kind of like what interests me. And, there are different ways to look at that through like an AI lens or something along those lines. But yeah, at the end of the day, like you have to find kind of the patterns. And I think the patterns are, hey, I need to build a brand that people trust. I have to create better content than the other folks in my space that are trying to, rank for those keywords or rank for those prompts or whatever it is. And you just have to stick to it for a long time. It's really the only way to do it.
I'm going to change direction slightly here. I know that when you ran agencies kind of back in the day, you had a lot of employees. So you're using employees as a form of leverage. Do you see that this trend is going away in the AI and automation world for marketers?
In terms of needing like a big headcount or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that when you just look at things like content writing and research and analyst work and things like that, AI can handle a lot of that stuff, So I think that there's definitely not a need for as many people, which is cool. I mean, you see like single solo founders out there moving quickly, launching products, growing products, being able to iterate on them quickly, things like that. Just getting back to kind of like the website work and landing page example and stuff like that. Like, so the vibemarketer.com website, like I built the whole thing, and I implement the SEO strategies on it. I create the content with AI on it. I build new landing pages, update the designs. 5 years ago, like I would have needed an agency or a few people to do those types of tasks, and I'm a non-technical person actually, like I
You
didn't
are.
grow up coding and stuff like that. I just kind of recently got into it with AI like over the past year.
Yeah.
So yeah, the leverage I've been able to gain there has been huge, like with content creation and all that. In the agency space, we had like a writing team and all that and had a high head count with those types of roles. And now we don't. And AI is the reason why. And I think you're seeing that across a lot of other types of businesses out there as well. I think in big tech, like a lot of code is being written by AI now. And
Yeah.
you can see where like the senior level engineers or whatever are sort of like utilizing AI instead of managing like junior developers or whatnot. You still need that expertise to know like what good looks like and what kind of questions to ask and everything. But I feel like you can move a lot faster and with lower bloat, lower costs. And it's a great time to be a builder right now.
Yeah, I was even thinking like for ideas, like you can test ideas in a day now. Like
Hmm.
I feel like you can build a landing page with a quick form. It doesn't even have to be hyper optimized. And then you can make some video ads for Facebook using
Yeah.
something like a HeyGen or whatever. And you can see like, do people fill out the form? Does it convert?
Right, right. Yeah. I was thinking about this recently. I think a lot of people now dive right into just like vibe coding, like a software tool or something like that, and they get kind of into that whole process and instead of just kind of putting out a landing page now or something. I don't know if you remember like the lean startup days, like
Yeah, of course.
you'd put up a landing page, you'd run some Google ads or Facebook ads to it, and you measure what happened. I still think that's the best way to go because you can get into what I call like a vibe vortex when you're like trying to vibe code, where before you know it, 2 weeks have gone by, 3 weeks have gone by, and you're tweaking this SaaS app or something in Replit or Cursor, whereas you could have learned a lot more just throwing out a landing page and running some ads to it. So I think that people have kind of like overlooked that step,
Interesting.
and because building's easier, relatively speaking, they just start building, which is almost the same issue that brought the whole lean startup thing to be in the first place. People would just start building, they'd spend a lot of money on a product to go and get it out there, and they didn't do the validation up front. Same thing happens today. Building's still cheaper and easier, but people are still missing that, like, hey, let's just throw something out there and test it today, and get learnings fast.
Yeah. And I've read that book a ton of times. I've done it before, but I've also fallen for the I don't need to test distribution. I know this idea is good. And then you test it like 3 months later and you're like, why the fuck did I do that? Like I know better, right? Like it's easy to be like, I could just build this and let's see what happens. And you
Yeah,
know,
I've done it so many times, and I still do that. I
I still do
still
it.
do.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trap that's really hard to get out of.
Yeah, so like this new question I'm trying to like just ask myself if I have an idea is instead of doing a crazy amount of research, do a bare amount of research. So it's like, okay, this is good enough to test. And then how do I test it in the next 24 hours? Because you can go from like, okay, I've done a amount of research to I need to do the deepest research possible. Who are all the competitors? What's everything? I need to know a full lay of the land. And
Right.
you may have just got better insight by testing the idea.
Absolutely. And the ultimate tests are like, are people going to pay for this or whatever? You know who Noah Kagan is, the founder of AppSumo?
Yeah, I saw a picture of you holding a couple of his
Yeah.
books when I was digging through.
I've learned a lot from him over the years. Like he has some processes that also kind of put like a time constraint on things, and like, hey, how would you validate like $1 million business over the weekend or whatever?
Yeah.
Do the manual things, like go and ask people for their credit card and like see what happens. But the idea of adding a time constraint, like you mentioned, I think is really smart. Like set some guardrails, like this is going to pass or fail within this time. I'm either going to double down or I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I think speed is and momentum super important in that.
Yeah, like there's this little balance of like being able to test things really quickly, but then still building for the long term. Because we were talking earlier about like building an audience, right? So you could tell yourself like, I need to spend a year long term and build my audience so that I can sell to this audience. But if you don't test along the way, you could be building the wrong audience or you could just be wasting time. So like you got to use that judgment to know like, okay, I need to test things, but I also want to build for the long term. And I think that's hard to do.
Yeah, for sure. Like what I do now that I do have an audience to test ideas is I just throw the idea out there publicly and I gauge the reaction. So like I built a landing page and put it out for this sort of like hiring model that we're launching through our community. So
Yeah.
I've been in the agency space and all that, but like I think that there's a significant gap out there in terms of like AI first marketers that could go and work with a brand and take these processes and automations and things like that into there. So built a landing page, threw it out there, and started getting some leads. I was like, hey, this is cool. Now we have a bunch of calls set up this month, and I think it's gonna do something. But I'll just throw an idea out there to the audience or the community and see how it's received, and I'll use that as kind of my gauge. Community is like almost another form of audience also. Like you can grow a niche community, and that's a lot different than trying to grow a big following on X. Oftentimes it's easier to grow a niche community than it is to try and grow a big following on X or LinkedIn or something like that. So I think people overlook that as a way to build their audience too. And you don't need 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people in that niche community. You just need a hundred of the right ones.
Yeah. The challenge sometimes with these communities. So like you have a community of marketers, right?
Hmm.
And let's say those people they want to help plumbing companies. Okay. They're not going to make a company for plumbing companies because they don't really care about it. They're going to want to make a community for marketers too. And then it's not going to grow because there's going to be too many communities for marketers. So I think that's the challenge is like they want to talk to marketers too, but then there becomes a saturation where everyone's trying to talk to marketers. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, that is kind of funny how that plays out.
Like it's how it always plays out. You know what I mean? In every niche, it's like, well, I
Yeah.
want myself to be the audience because I like making content for myself.
Right.
Then you have to, it's just like this. I
Right.
don't know how to explain it, but it's just this funny thing that happens. And if you got in and you did a good job and you have an audience there, that's great because you can test the ideas. But there's
Yeah.
not a lot of people in your community that want to be the AI marketer for plumbing companies, and that's
Yeah.
their brand. They could do that and build a niche community around
Right.
plumbers,
Right.
but it's less sexy.
Right. Another interesting like angle here is trying to grow your audience within a niche community, within a community. So there's this guy in our community named Rokas, and he's kind of in the AI SEO space and all that. And he was saying like I've struggled to kind of grow my audience on social channels, but I've grown a great engaged little following here within the Vibe Marketers community.
Yeah.
Now he's got all kinds of demos for his products and services. He serves marketers, obviously, but sometimes just trying to become a valued member of a pre-existing community is another way to build a micro audience that you can interact with, learn from, and sell to. So you don't really have to be the one that's, setting up the community or whatever. You can just be engaged in places. It does still take a lot of work. Like, it's not easy. People want it quick. they want to go and build a following fast and stuff like that. But the reality is like it's a grind, no matter how you cut it. Like if you want to grow on YouTube, if you want to grow within a community, whatever.
Yeah, I told you I grew a channel, like a fitness channel on YouTube, and I did
Yeah,
like 55 interviews and it grew well. But I'm like, oh, like my audience is like not people I want to sell to. I actually don't think they should spend any money, and I don't want to sell them like garbage. So it's like,
yeah.
okay, you got to pick the community correct if you want to sell a product or service too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You have to have expertise, you have to know the topic. I mean, you have to really add a lot of value and be able to add value if you're going to go and do it. So
And
I think, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, and I think that's the hardest part is like you have people who probably want to join your community and they want to have marketers as their audience, but they've been doing it for a year. And they're not going to have the accumulated knowledge and the taste of people who've been doing it for 10 plus years. It's just
Right.
not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that money or whatever follows value in essence, and the person with 10 years of experience that can clearly communicate that value has an advantage. Now, that's another difference, though. Like some person could have 10 years of experience, but they're bad at communicating their ideas. They can't write for the internet. They can't
Right.
make video or something like that. Whereas if you only have a year of experience or whatever, but you're a really good communicator, and you can tell a story and you know how to kind of unpack that value, then I think you're going to have a lot easier time. Also, I think there's a trap people get into where it's like, I don't know anything new or different. I've only
Yeah.
been in this for a year. I don't have anything to say that people are going to find whatever. Well, like the reality is that you probably know more than a lot of people out there. And if they do know more than you, that's not your audience. So I don't know. It's kind of a mental trap that people get into sometimes with that.
Yeah, I also think picking the right platform makes sense. Like we were saying like this, there's this X bubble, but if you were teaching the same stuff that's being taught on X in a different manner on Instagram, you probably are targeting a totally different audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, again, like X is very kind of tech bubble like in a way, and it's really hard to grow on X.
For sure, for sure.
Really
All right,
hard.
so you actually lined me up perfectly. I was going to put up this picture and you're talking about storytelling and branding. So you posted this once upon a time. I love this. Uh, I'd love to just know which ones maybe stand out the most to you and how you've used it with your branding.
Yeah. I mean, I think that owning a word in your customer's head to own the market is something that we kind of inadvertently did with this whole like vibe marketing concept. We kind of created our own category, which was awesome. Like we didn't even intend to do that, and it just kind of happened and it
Yeah.
caught on. I think better doesn't win first or different does. Like to me, this is just kind of like not enough people are digging into these sort of like having a unique value proposition, like with their product or with their service. So I think you do have to be different or have something unique to kind of like stand out and get traction. You could build the best product in the world, but if you can't communicate the unique value proposition to the pain point of the customer, you're going to struggle. I think sacrificing breadth over depth is super important as well. To me, that's just kind of like niching down and finding your like audience on your platform and just doing the boring kind of work of trying not to go be something to everyone. Clarity, converting, and things like that. A lot of this comes into sort of like copywriting and communication to me. Like I think a lot of people have like brand speak and stuff like that on their website. They think it sounds good, but I recommend just like writing on your website or whatever how you would like talk to someone in a conversation.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to come up with a bunch of, you know, sexy stuff. Like just speak how you would normally in a conversation. And I think that helps a lot. But yeah, you want to know an interesting little secret about this post?
Yeah.
I actually used AI for it.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a whiteboard in here in my dining room, which is my office. But the actual content here, like I kind of led the AI to get there But in terms of the actual points, like I didn't write them.
Interesting. So
Yeah. So
maybe talk through that. Like, what do you think? What did your prompt look like? Like, maybe just talk through how you got this as the end
yeah,
result. I wouldn't have thought it was AI, so my
yeah,
mind's slightly blown right now.
yeah. So you know, I am really into sort of the old school, like direct response marketing type stuff. You know, if you think about those old school sales letters from back in the day, and there's just some great books about these topics. You know, you've got people like Eugene Schwartz or Dan Kennedy or Claude Hopkins, you know, some of these like timeless, David Ogilvy, like timeless kind of marketing greats. And I was trying to kind of just have a chat with, I think it was ChatGPT, and I was just like, hey, like, what are the common themes between all of these great old school
Yeah.
direct response marketers, you know? And I just had a chat back and forth, and like, I was like, hey, distill that further. Like, let's simplify it even more. Like, let's only zero down to the top 10 out of this list of 50 or whatever. So just kind of continually like refining the list, refining the list, refining the list. And this is like a proven format on social. I actually learned this sort of list based like photo thing from Greg Eisenberg. You'll see like, you know, he would put up kind of like a screenshot of a Google Doc or of a Word doc, and it would just have
Yeah.
like a list of things, and he'd highlight some of them. And I was like, that format's a little tired right now. How can we add a fresh spin to it? So I uploaded example posts of like Greg's tweets with those images, mine that I've done like that, into that
Yeah.
same conversation, and you know, use that as sort of like a way to kind of refine and make it sound natural. And then once I had it, I just wrote it on my whiteboard, snapped a picture of it, and the post did really well. I was pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, I think the fact that you used a whiteboard and it's in your own text makes it feel like you thought through it without AI.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Because if it was just a Google Doc, then I would assume that it was probably AI generated. But
Right.
the physical makes a difference.
Yep, for sure, for sure. And you know, if you, I don't know if you're into sort of the like direct to consumer, like e-commerce world or whatever, but there's been a lot of Facebook ad trends that sort of prove that that format can help with engagement or conversion. Like some ads I've seen out there, like people would write on a paper and like hold it up. There's this guy, Barry Holt, I think is his name. He calls them ugly ads. And you know, you don't need like a beautiful produced thing. Oftentimes people will sort of like react or, you know, engage with a thing that looks really raw and authentic, even if it's not pretty, you know? So yeah, it's an interesting learning for like your ads too.
That trend exists with YouTube thumbnails too. I was reading about
Absolutely.
that. Whereas if you put something like raw from the physical world that you're holding in your thumbnail, it will have better click-through rate because people are used to things being very either polished or 100% AI. So
Yes.
even if it was something that could be digital, like write it out, take a picture, put that picture in, your click-through rate will be better because
Yeah.
for the same reasons you're saying for ads.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I mean like the lesson is like find a proven format and how can you make it feel raw or authentic, you know? Like I'm
Yeah.
still following the proven format for the social post, but I just added a unique angle to it that made it stand out just a little bit more than like your snapshot of a doc, you know?
So did you think of the whiteboard yourself, or did you prompt that this is the format and the style, and how do I do it in a raw style?
I thought of the whiteboard myself, so that was non-AI. My wife brought a whiteboard from like her office here and
Nice.
set it up in my room, and I was like, hey, like I want to try this out today, and it was just kind of a random idea as I was thinking about like different content formats to try. And I think that kind of gets into like when you're building an audience, like if you're actually good at it, you have to try to come up with new formats a lot. Formats will kind of like they'll kind of peak, and then like you know you'll notice like you know those innate in workflow ones on X where everyone started like posting like pictures of like these crazy AI workflows, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of died down. People got used to the format. So like, I'm sure someone will come up with another iteration of it, but you have to iterate on your formats. And ultimately, if you can create new formats like Greg does, then that's what can really make you stand out.
For sure. Even for YouTube, like from a podcast standpoint, I do a lot of sharing images and have different formats and segments. And
Yep.
I kind of think about it that way. Instead of a podcast, it's more like a talk show.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Sometimes I'm thinking of new formats and I'm thinking, what's the right format for the right guest? And I think that's how things stay fresh, or everything kind of feels the same, right? Like people want something that feels slightly different. And you can be good at jumping on treads, but if you can kind of have a point of view and go for it, then I think that's even better.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna go through a couple more images here. That's not the one I wanted. All right, you got this picture of Greg and Dave Senra, and I believe you said you were a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
I'd love to know maybe what you learned or got from that conversation and how you became a fly on the wall.
Yeah, for sure. So basically every year, Greg, myself, and two of our partners, Theo and Jordan, we all do like an annual offsite. So we'll go down to Miami. We rented a house. Miami's where Greg lives, and we just get together and do whiteboard sessions, plan, hang out, do some IRL, which is kind of a rarity in today's world. I feel like when everyone's working remotely, having Zoom calls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Greg had a couple guests in during the time to record some episodes for Startup Ideas podcast, and David was one of the guests. And I was like, to be honest, I didn't know about David prior to this sitting in on this conversation, and it was like the first time I listened to him, just sitting there. I was just like blown away with the level of depth and knowledge that he had. I mean, he was like an encyclopedia, like being able to reference like, these books that he had read and pull these facts and stuff like that. I haven't really ever seen someone with that level of depth of knowledge and like expertise before. I mean, I was just blown away. Like he was talking about like, you know, he'd be talking about like, Berkshire Hathaway, like Charlie Munger, and then he'd be able to pull something in for about like James Dyson, and then like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, and like just his ability to like connect the dots between like all of these kind of like business greats or whatever and stuff was mind blowing. So it was just a really cool conversation to watch and see someone that was just like extremely world class at their like craft. I really respect that.
Yeah, he'll do this thing on his episode sometimes, and you can tell it's not planned. He'll just like throw at the episode. He'll be like, "Oh, on episode 131, I said so and so." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's wild that you can remember that."
Yeah, his recall and ability to remember great detail about like everything that he's like studied and stuff was unreal. Not many people can do that.
And it's in Miami, so it's a good time too. I think they're both in Miami, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. Next one here. Tell me about Leap.
Wow, this is a throwback here. I like it. So let's see. That kind of goes back to toward the beginning of like my whole kind of like startup journey.
Yeah.
I was working like a normal job in 2011, and like you, I was like interested in health and stuff like that. That was one of my passions, especially at the time. I've always had an itch to like start stuff. Like as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to like make things, like create projects, start my own business, whatever. And I was like, "Ooh, I have an idea for an app in the workplace." And the first like iteration of all this was trying to create like a kind of a gamified like corporate wellness program. Like I worked in a beer distributorship, so a lot of people were not, following like healthy diets and lifestyles and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Donuts in the morning, McDonald's for lunch, a six pack after work type of stuff. So it's like I wonder if there's a way to like kind of make getting healthy fun in the workplace. So we started, the initial name was called Wealthy. It was Wellthy. And I had never created like a digital product or a SaaS or anything like that before. And I was living in Cincinnati. So I just started to do some research around like what's the startup ecosystem, who can I connect with, are there little meetups or get-togethers. So
Yeah.
I started to drive to these different meetups and network, and I was kind of like pitching my corporate wellness idea or whatever, and met a couple guys who had just started like an accelerator program. You
Cool.
remember those were like really popular.
Yeah.
Yep. So I got into this accelerator program in Cincinnati. It's called the Brandery, and it was started by these guys, Dave Knox, JB Kropp, and Rob McDonald. Super, super cool guys. They were really connected kind of just in the business world there. And I recruited a friend who was like a web developer and a friend who was a designer. And we just, were kind of living that startup life. Like we rented a house together, up
Awesome.
all night coding, doing the whole thing. And we started to see that like this whole corporate wellness thing probably wasn't for us. It was kind of hard to like, get in touch with the businesses, make a sale, all of that. So we pivoted the platform into this mobile app, Leap. And what Leap was just an app where you could create like a challenge of any kind with your friends. And then you just like took a photo to like prove what you did. So you could be like, eat a healthy breakfast each day of the week. We had Facebook Connect, you could invite your friends. And then it was just sort of like this ephemeral sort of like challenge that lasted, 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it was. And we kind of gamified it. And, we built it ourselves. We launched it from our table in Cincinnati in this little house that we rented. When we launched it, like Apple reached out and featured it in the App Store. We launched it inadvertently on like Leap Day that year. I think it was 2012 or something.
No
And
way.
yeah, kind of went viral, and we got like 50,000 users like out of the gate. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And, we didn't have a clue what we were doing like at the time. So we launched it, and then I kind of went around to, try to raise like a seed round and stuff like that. And kind of fell on my face, met a lot of cool people, pitched a lot of cool people, but wasn't able to raise the funds I needed. We learned a heck of a lot during that time. And like, a job that I ended up getting after this sort of led to a bunch of other things. And that wouldn't have been there if we didn't go and build this app.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, that corporate wellness space is tough because it's one of those things, and I've done a bunch of these products where if you ask people within the company if it's a good idea, they'll always say yes. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we totally need that. But it's not a big enough problem for them to solve, or it's hard to actually get all the employees on board, and there's like HR issues, and you're like, oh shit, like on the surface, everyone thinks you should do it, but then it's like it's really hard to actually sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And like while the app itself was like, as a business was didn't work out, like this is how I met Greg, launching this app.
Okay, cool.
We met in like 2012 or something like that, all because of this. And then, we built that relationship over the years, and now I get to partner with them, which is really
Well,
cool.
that's cool. I didn't know that. That's a cool
Yeah.
story.
So, like launching things, putting things out into the world, like you never know what's going to come of it.
Yeah, I've launched so much stuff that's failed and I don't care. Like I
Yeah.
really don't care. People around me
Yeah.
care. Like, oh, like are you like depressed? I'm like, not really. Like I don't expect everything to work and like
Yeah.
maybe some good connections will come from it. Maybe nothing. That's okay.
Right.
It is what
Right.
it is. You know what I mean?
I
All right, I
think
got
that's a
one
huge.
more here for you.
Hmm. Yep. Um, so yeah, this is like all you need to know to be a world-class marketer to grow your thing. I've got ACP by Greg Eisenberg, which is Audience Community Product. Influenced by Robert Cialdini, copywriting from the great kind of direct response, titans, and then kind of like building and shipping things in public, like Peter Levels. So these are just some of the things that have really worked for me and have kind of transformed how I build and try to like grow my business. ACP like is super powerful, and basically what that means is it's kind of like the new funnel, you know? So you build the audience, you convert the audience into a owned niche community, and then you get feedback from the community on what product you want to build. And you build for the community and with the community, you know?
Hmm.
That way you already have sort of like your customers right there. They're involved, they trust you, you can learn a lot from them, you can add value to them and things like that. So I'm building like a number of products right now just based off of feedback from the Vibe Marketers community. So massive unlock. And at the same time, the Vibe Marketers community turned into a great business, which is really cool byproduct of that. Influenced by Robert Cialdini is like, I think one of the best books to understand marketing. And it's all about persuasion and psychology, like what motivates people to act. And, you know, it's things like scarcity and social proof and reciprocity and liking and authority and, you know, these different sort of, you know, kind of high level ideas that get people to take action. And when you understand those principles of persuasion, you start to see them everywhere. You know, you start to see them in good ads, you see them in a good funnel for a business, you see it in a good landing page or website, you see it in how, you know, Greg kind of uses like ACP, if you will, you know? So I think that that's almost like the foundational book to read if you want to be a good marketer, understanding that. And, you know, copywriting and direct response is how you can put those principles of persuasion into action. It all starts with good writing. It all starts with being a good copywriter, in my view. And if you can write well and communicate your ideas clearly and understand persuasion, how to move someone, whether that's emotionally or, you know, pulling out their credit card or joining your thing or following you or whatever, you have a lot of, I guess, power that you can wield how you want. So I think, like, you know, for me, what I used to do, and a lot of people have talked about this, like Sam Parr, I think, has talked about this, who has Hampton and stuff like that. But like, I used to write out sales letters on a legal pad. You know, I would go online, I would find a really good old school sales letter, like from some of these folks here, and
Yeah.
I would like copy it word for word, and I would go and I would study these, like, you know, internet marketers and like how they're structuring their business and their products and their funnels and their emails and all that, and just really dug into it. You know, that was a big kind of unlock for me. So even if you're not like a direct response copywriter, those still translate over to like audience growth or coming up and structuring a good piece of content for the internet. You know, you have a strong hook that has like emotional appeal. Maybe you're stoking pain, kind of, you know, supporting that with like social proof or something along those lines. And then maybe you have like a call to action, like, you know, toward the end. So like these similar layouts or formats are true across a lot of things, just, you know, beyond just like sales letters. And then, yeah, building in public, I think, I think that, you know, a lot of people think that, ooh, if I just do this in public, that's my whole marketing strategy or whatever. And I don't think that that's kind of what I meant by this. What I meant by this is like, I think having kind of like openness and authenticity and letting people get to know you and what you're working on, and, you know, not trying to like hide your ideas and stuff like that, and just generally sharing things because you think they're valuable. And if you know these underlying principles and foundations, that can be a powerful combination.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to say they're overrated, but I feel like ACP and Build in Public are appropriately rated, and the other three might be underrated in the world of,
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that.
right? Like you can't just build in public and then assume you're going to get this big audience and then that's enough, which I think is the default state.
Right.
And I think I
And you
need to
know,
read influence.
and you know, the other kind of fallacy about the build in public thing, I think, is a lot of what people share are like their MRR numbers or their Stripe screenshots or whatever. And you know who that attracts? Other like indie builders out there or whatever. And a lot of times they don't make good customers. So however you're building in public, you have to do it in a way that's ultimately going to attract who you want to do business with. So, you know, I build like really cool marketing use cases in public, right? Like that's not sharing MRR screenshots of like a SaaS and saying I'm trying to get to 20K a month or something like that with this thing. Like the things I'm building, I think have a lot of value for my audience. You know what I mean? It's not just sort of like trying to stroke ego or share MRR or something like that. So I think to do it well, there needs to be kind of a mindset shift for most people.
And just speaking on that, I think the platform dictates it as well. I think there's a lot of platforms where you could succeed just by pushing MRR screenshots. But like there's no chance you're going to succeed on something like YouTube. Like
No.
YouTube is hard to crack if you don't actually provide a lot of real value,
Yeah.
education or entertainment. Like you have to be on the extreme of each. When I think other platforms are a little bit more lenient, like Instagram or X, etc.
Right. Yep. I agree. I agree.
Cool. All right, I'm going to end today with kind of a fun question here. So give me a contrarian or hot take that you believe is going to happen with the future of marketing.
Whew. I don't know if it's much of a hot take anymore, but just from what I see out there, I would say 98, 99% of marketers are not ready for what's going to happen within a 12 to 18 month time frame. I mean, at the pace that AI is improving and things like that, I think that a lot of marketing jobs are going to be somewhat irrelevant, and you're going to have autonomous agents that can go out there and execute a lot of the things that folks are doing now. I think that agencies there's gonna be a bloodbath in the agency and service sector at some point. I think that, if these companies aren't getting lean and embracing sort of like these tools and stuff, they're gonna be in for like a rude awakening. I think that, some people might think that's like hype or whatever, like, hey, AI is not gonna come and do that or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that like unless you're kind of a systems thinker, a generalist that can see where the board is going, you're probably going to be in a tough spot, in a year and a half.
Where do you think people are going to be blindsided? Like, I think people understand, like, okay, copywriting is going to get better and tech. Is
Yeah.
there like a specific either format or job function that you think that people aren't ready, that's gonna get disrupted?
I mean, one of them that I think about a lot is like media buying and running ads and stuff like that. I mean,
Mm,
I don't think that you will need to go into an ads manager and, click around and make tweaks to campaigns or, change your budgets around or, build the campaigns or whatever. So I don't think that like a paid media like specialist or whatever is really going to be much of a differentiated role like in the near future. That's one. I think like with video and the rapid rate at which like Sora and things like that are improving, like, a lot of these creative production roles are also going to be like very much impacted. Influencer type stuff. I mean, I think with the improvement of video models and these AI influencers, there's going to be a lot of changes there as well. There's a lot of like influencer marketing agencies, a lot of influencers that make a living by like highlighting products and stuff like that. I think that, that could also be something. I think in terms of data analytics, like, you'll just be chatting with your data. You don't need someone to go and dig through everything and make a report to present to the client or whatnot. So I think that what's safe is sort of like being able to come up with a good strategy, like, thinking outside of the box, but like if it's like kind of rote or task oriented work, like I don't really see much of a future there.
Yeah, something I think about is like if I worked in a company, I'm like, would I get like one-shotted by AI eventually? And
Hmm.
there's a lot of parts where I'm like, I might be. And I'm like, if I was in trouble, then a lot of people are in trouble.
For sure. For sure. I know it's wild, and it's just moving so quickly. Like I think that it's kind of like that boiling a frog type scenario where if you bring it to a slow boil, like
Yeah,
it'll stay in there versus when you just drop it in the boiling pot and it'll jump out. And I think we're being slow boiled.
for sure, man. Dude, that was a lot of fun today. Where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on X. I'm at Boring Marketer, and then I do have like an online community. We do like all these really cool mentor sessions lately, where we'll have these experts on things like SEO and GEO and I have like really practical implementation and use cases and fireside chats and all that. So that's thevibemarketer.com. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.